Hey everybody, welcome back to the bar.
Today we're bringing you something special with this episode.
Todd, does that mean it's a very special episode?
It is. Yeah,
Okay, just
it's a
checking.
special episode. You want to say what it's about?
Sure.
Okay.
We had an opportunity to talk with Joe Watson and Toby Braswell of the Riffs on Riffs podcast about albums, inside and out.
Yeah, clever there. Particularly how an artist's music and album cover design impressed each of us.
And if you're new to Riffs, Joe and Toby dig deep into the audible side of pop culture with their podcast. So combined with our visual stuff, we thought it was a match made in barroom heaven.
And we also needed friends to help cover our tab.
Smart. And although it sounds like Todd is talking into a toilet paper roll, he really wasn't.
No.
We made him get burgers for everyone, and he was stuck in the drive-thru.
Yeah. So anyway, give it a listen and let us know what you think.
Hey everyone, it's Elliot.
And Todd, welcome to Two Designers Walk Into a Bar, an ongoing conversation about pop culture and iconic design.
All right, so we're all gathered around. We got our vinyl, our CDs. What are we talking about today?
I'm happy today because this right here kind of reminds me of a comic book I used to collect called Marvel Team Up, right? It was like two superheroes that got together for one mission, right? And that's why I feel that's what we're witnessing today. So I think all of the folks from both camps, the fans from both camps, I think are in for a treat today. And I think we're on the precipice of greatness. That's what I see this being.
Wow, that's an album name right there. The Precipice of Greatness.
That is, yeah.
Don't steal it, Elliot. I'm taking it. It's mine.
Okay, that's you got dibs.
I've got a boatload of unreleased tracks that were all on the precipice of greatness. And just never quite went over the edge to actually being worth listening to.
Awesome. We probably should introduce the names of the of said podcast, right? We probably should do that. Elliot, why don't we have you start? I think that's a good way to start. Why don't we have you start?
Okay. Elliot Strunk, podcast co-host on the Precipice of Greatness, and one of the two co-hosts of Two Designers Walk Into a Bar with my buddy Todd here. So Todd, I'll hand it off to you, I suppose.
Hey there, this is Todd Coates, and I am far from the precipice of greatness. I can't even see where the precipice is, but along with Elliot, we are co-hosts of Two Designers Walk Into a Bar, and we're glad to be here talking to you guys.
Joe, you always handle our intros. Please do the same if you can.
Yes, welcome to everyone across the vast universe and all the precipices. I'm Joe Watson, host of Riffs on Riffs with my fabulous co-host, the man, the myth, the legend. You know him as, what do they always say? Number 87 in your program, but number 1 in your hearts? That would be Mr. Toby Braswell.
For those of you keeping score at home.
Right. Bingo. Exactly. Well, hey, we are, I'm super excited for this. And I think we have a unique theme for today's crossover episode, right? I think a unique theme. So you guys talk about everything designing, right? Everything. So for Riff Nation, if you guys could tell, I guess, our listeners who might not have had the pleasure of listening to your podcast, what your podcast is about, and then we'll do the same for your fan base as well. Why don't we start off with that?
Well, Todd, I think you have the best phrase for it. I mean, you basically say that our podcast is behind the music for design, for the things we love.
That is how we look at it. It's behind the music for the things we love. We're sort of pop culture junkies, but what we love is they're so familiar to us, but we want to dig into the stories that got them familiar to us.
When you talk about pop culture, is it always visual pop culture? The show says two designers walk into a bar, so I'm assuming it's visual art and culture of some kind with a design-related theme. Or do you ever stray?
We do stray. we stray, yeah. A lot of it is visual, but we say two designers because we're just hypercritical about everything.
Including each other.
Yeah, especially each other.
But yeah, Joe, it's interesting. So we definitely, usually something is not exclusively just visual, right? There's always more to it. So we've talked about things, one of the things we're going to be talking about today is album art, for example. And obviously there's an audio component that goes with the visual component. A lot of things like, for example, packages. If you think about cool, interesting packages, there's a geometric component to that. There's an experiential component to that. So there's never, when you think about design, whether it's something like sound design, whether it's something like visual design, it's all about cultivating an experience. And it's really plugging into this human aspect of people creating things for other people. Right. And that's where the joy comes from. And if those things are well done or quirky enough, they just have this shelf life. They just have this staying power. And so that's when we say the things we love or things that are iconic, that's really where we're coming from. And, I feel like you guys do the same thing with a lot of the music you talk about.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where the name of the show came from. The whole Riffs on Riffs is we start with the music. And very similar to you, obviously you had that whole VH1 Behind the Music that kicked off the deep dive behind the scenes exploration stuff. But we started this show years ago kind of doing a deep dive into connecting dots. Where did these samples come from? How did it connect to other songs? Oh my gosh, there's an amazing story over here that probably people haven't connected and heard about. And, as we've gotten older and become a little wiser and a little more interested in sharing our views just on life and wisdom and whatever, we've taken a little more liberties to use this music as a starting point and then continue the riffage on different themes and things that come out of those songs, those artists, and that history.
Very similar to what you guys discuss on your pod. I'm amazed with the creative process, right? The decisions behind the decisions, right? And to me, if we're talking about, whether it's talking about why the roof on the Pizza Hut looks like a pirate hat or or whatever, right? Or how songs got their names, right? Or fact that this particular album was recorded in someone's kitchen as compared to a real studio, or what have you. Like, all of those things, I think, are just amazing and make an experience of an album or architecture more 3D, right? So it's not just two-dimensional anymore. Now we're actually getting to that third dimension, which I know that, from the listeners that I've talked to, just in casual conversations, not necessarily with designers, but at bars, for sure. It's always a fantastic conversation. It's always conversation just goes from here to here to here. And that's one of the reasons why I'm excited about today. So let's get into our theme today. Elliot kind of hinted toward it, right? You kind of put a little teaser out there, Elliot, as far as like what we're going to be talking about today. Can you talk today about what our homework was today before? What do we have to come to class with? What was the homework?
We were all sort of chatting about it and really trying to zero in on it. We landed on the homework assignment of delivering or bringing to the table, bringing to the bar, whatever word you wish to use here, what we feel is an iconic album and being able to talk about it inside and out, right? Being able to talk about that visual aspect as well as the audio aspect and how the two work or don't work and what people like about them and just are they successful, right? So like something, music and design, if you think about it, they're both very, very personal. They're things you can get very, very passionate about and really have emotions tied to. And so something that you may absolutely love and you might think works really, really well, right? That you like, you think about things like, what do they say the music that you were exposed to, like in high school and early college is like during your formative years is like incredibly powerful. And so there's obviously emotion tied into all of that. Right. And so something that is incredibly emotional or incredibly dear to you, the next person might be like, it's all right. And that's so
wow,
crushing
that's a bunch
sometimes,
of crap.
right? Yeah.
Can I add too, Elliot? All of us probably came of that age that you were talking about in an era that vinyl records were pretty much your biggest choice then. That went away and now it's back. But those are 12 inches pieces of art that you would stare at and you would analyze and try to figure out, along with that sound that was coming through the speakers, what is this artist telling me through the visual medium, through the audio as well. And Ellie and I figured that if some artists could figure out how to get smello vision on their albums, it would make them
Scratch
even
and
better.
sniff would have gone a long
like
way.
That's an
Yeah.
Andy Warhol thing, right? He should have done that.
Well, I pulled some of my albums out of storage, and they definitely had some smell-o-vision on them somehow.
Yeah, I bet.
I think Warhol did, but it was like tomato soup cans, and people just weren't into it. It was wasn't very pleasant.
Should have been grilled cheese.
In preparation for this, I went through so many different album covers, and that was, to me, that was part of the fun, right? Was going through all of this because, Todd, I'm with you, right? As a 70s baby, right? As a 70s baby, we grew up with vinyl, went away from it, and then eventually came back, especially for like the hip hop sampling producers out there. This is what we used to do. This is how we found our next sample. And I can't tell you how many albums I bought from the dollar bin just because of the album cover. The album
100%.
cover, especially the Herb Alpert album covers. Those especially.
Whipped cream and other delights. Look that one up.
Come on.
Toby, I think the same designer did Ohio Players album covers at the same time.
Yes.
Right.
God, how crazy is that I have that album too? How crazy is that?
I'm seeing a pattern. Yeah, but let's hear it for the crate diggers. Let's hear it for those
100%.
folks that are digging in there and finding those cool things.
No matter what your reason is.
Yes, right.
Well, I mean, if worse comes to worse, even if they're, to your point, Toby, even if the record's totally crummy, at least you got a cool poster for $1,
Yeah,
right?
True. Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
You know what? It's so many comic books have been bought for the artwork on the cover. I can't tell you how so many of those stories were absolute garbage. Like, I feel like calling all of them out. Like, that storyline was, if email existed back then, listen, I'd have been an angry Marvel and DC comic reader. Like, are you serious? You can't find anything else better? All right, we're gonna get off of that. I'm getting on the tangent. I'm very excited. Joe, you got something to say?
Yeah, I want to be sure that we hit the listeners with some caveats here, because I think the challenge that I'm guessing we all faced is we were very clearly, you have to have an album that has epic appeal or impact from a visual perspective and from a sonic perspective. Because there's lots of albums that I might have picked ahead of this just from an audio standpoint. And there's lots of albums I might have picked just because, the artwork is more impactful or interesting or great design and gatefolds and whatever. But we had to come up with something that hit on both fronts equally well. And so I'm curious, before we do the big reveal of each of our 4 albums, what were some of the ones that didn't make the cut?
Ooh, like runners up.
Yeah, Elliot, you struggled. So
I did. I'm happy.
Todd, what a friend to call him out like that. You
right under the bus.
Look,
no one called it. No one said we were friends.
look. If I'm friends with Todd, I'm struggling. Let's just put that out there, like right now.
Shots fired.
Toby, it's a matter of time till he takes it out on YouTube. Just
There's a wide blast radius. Toby, buckle up.
Elliot, I the question, then I immediately cut you off. But you did tell me you had some challenges finding one.
Yes. So, Joe, to build on what you just said, my criterion, I think I said this to you guys, this is like the desert island. You can only take one album or CD or whatever it is with you. And I have hundreds of CDs. I had a wonderful stroll down memory lane. So I have, if you guys are willing to indulge me, I'll give you one of my runners up. So this was an album from 1993, and it was the album Star by the American band Belly. Do you guys remember that band at all? And if
I
not,
remember the band.
yeah.
Barely.
So their biggest hit, you might remember the song called "Feed the Tree." Does that ring a bell?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was hot in the early mid '90s, and I'll admit I think I still have a little bit of a crush on Tanya Donnelly, the lead singer. So that had something to do with it narrowing down into one of the
You should, yeah.
final ones on my list. But
You should.
so alternative college rock. The design is great. So there was this studio called V23 in Great Britain, and they did a lot of work for 4AD, and it was a designer named Chris Big, and that's big with 2 G's because, of course, why not, right? And then photography.
Go big or go home.
Exactly. And then photography from this guy named Chris Gorman. And it was just very lush and just very layered, very collage-like, this imagery and this typography. It was just beautiful. And the music was just really, really great. And so I felt that the two, given our criteria, the two match really, really well. And we can, of course, share resources to these albums, post them online. You can go find the full album on YouTube. Like, it's not exotic in any way. But so that was one of my runners up. I mean, you guys must have struggled with, I can't be the only one. I mean, come on, don't hang me out to dry like this.
Elliot, I will let you know that I'm in sales and insurance sales, so every day is a struggle, my friend. Every day. I can say that with so much confidence. I know the listeners can't see me, but my chest is out in saying that. Oh, every day is a struggle. Okay. I like where you went in regards to your, as far as the runner-up. So I'm going to give mine and I'm going to be really quick about it. My runner-up was My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye.
Yeah.
So the first thing, it's one of those covers, like, it's like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, what is this?
It's a Russian nesting doll of suspense.
And I truly meant that. Like what is this? Oh, wait a minute. What is this?
And Toby, for the third time, did you put the emphasis on the is? What is this? Just to see where that went.
Listen, I haven't broken down a sentence since English class. Okay, we're not going to start. We're not going to do that. Forget the predicate. Forget the subject, the direct object. Forget all of that. I will say this is that the music. This is Kanye West's album released in November of 2010. Fantastic album, and to me, it just caught me by surprise. I had no idea that this music was going to be as good, because I kind of fell away from Kanye. I was an early fan and was like, come out another album. It's not going to be the same as all the rest of them. And then it just hit me. And it's like two things that I will say about the album. It's like, one, I knew from one listen that this is going to be considered a classic hip hop album. And the second thing that I realized is that someone was definitely on drugs in the production of said album. Those two things I know to be true. It was very dark. It stood, and actually my official choice is pretty dark as well, but we will get into that a little later. I'm curious, Todd, which album was your runner-up?
Oh, man, Toby, I am so embarrassed to tell you guys this. Not because I don't love the album and the band and the album cover, but you guys are like...
Todd, you know what you sounded like right there? I gotta press pause here for one moment. You guys ever watch the Looney Tunes where you have the
buzzer?
Sylvester,
Oh, I thought you were going to say the buzzer.
Like, Father, I'm so disappointed. Father.
I'm so disappointed.
You guys are going to be so disappointed. How did a mouse beat you up, Father?
Well, I'm not the only reason. I stand by my runner-up, but you guys are giving like these like, kind of eclectic, artistic statements. Mine is also an artistic statement, but I thought back to when did this mean something to me? When did I realize that the stuff on the outside and the stuff on the inside might be connected? So, gentlemen, I am proud to tell you that my runner-up was Destroyer by Kiss from 1976.
I should have guessed that.
Fantasy Art by Ken Kelly. I studied that so much. Like, I can't even tell you. But alas, I did not go there because I didn't want to have an hour of you berating me like, Father, I'm so embarrassed.
Well, you won't get an hour, but you will get 30 minutes.
That's the podcast extended cut. That's the double album.
Thank you, Toby.
The Patreon version. There you go.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny. Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. Joe, what about you? What about you, man? What did you come up with for your runner-up?
My runner-up. So I kind of came at it from two ways. So I'm going to go a double runner-up, but I'll go through them quickly. I think when I started to think iconic visually, I just went to Duran Duran's Rio, the whole Patrick Nagel illustration. That to me, it's like cheating. It kind of seems a little bit too easy. And I added another criteria where I was like, well, it has to resonate with me personally. And I love me some Duran Duran. I actually think Rio's a great album, but it's not something that, I revisit on a regular basis, or I have a great appreciation for it, but I don't know how influential it was to me at the time it came out. I probably listen to it more now than I did back in the day. And then I think the other one was, and it's sitting right over here, I'm looking at it, was Santana's Moonflower album. And I think sonically that one probably had a much bigger impact on me and my, path as a guitar player and just all of that stuff. And I remember as a kid pulling out those albums. At the time I had no idea, but I thought like, oh my God, this is a picture of the moon. I think it's just a picture out of an airplane. But, as a kid, I was like, they went up into space and they got pictures of this. So I was pretty stoked about that. So those were two where I kind of came at it and I was like, well, they don't fit all the criteria. So we got to keep moving.
All right. So now I'm eager to hear our official choices and the reasons behind those, because all of you gentlemen gave some pretty incredible stories behind the runners up there. So the winner here must be spectacular. That's what I'm thinking, Toby.
Well, Todd, you got some digging out to do. I think you should start pretty quickly.
I agree.
You go first.
Yeah.
I knew I was setting myself up for that. All right. Sometimes Elliot and I like to play a little guessing game of, what we're talking about. We don't have a crazy amount of time to do that, but I'm going to tell you that my album is from 1987. So it was from back in the day. It was a double album. It was by Prince, and it was Sign of the Times. So,
okay, right.
You guys are probably familiar with it. One of the things that's great about it is it's a record that touches on poverty, the AIDS crisis, drug abuse, gang violence, the news media, and even the Challenger disaster. And that's all before the end of the first chorus of the title song.
Right.
So, Prince was like cramming it in there, right?
It was like, let's go.
Yeah, right. So I got a lot to say here. But the reason I like it is it's Prince at his genre-bending best. It's rock, pop, soul, ballads, gospel, everything. And it's danceable at a time when dance pop on the radio sounded nothing like that. So besides being his most overtly political record to date, it's also been his most critically acclaimed. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with it.
It's a good pick.
I found out, Toby, as we were talking, Ellie and I like to dig into sometimes the salacious part of the story, and I found a pretty good story that we can label irony for this, because the album, as I said, was released on March 30th, 1987, and as luck would have it, the night before that release, Prince and Under the Cherry Moon swept the 7th annual Golden Raspberry Awards in Hollywood. So,
wow. Okay.
You know what the Golden Raspberries are? It's the worst of
That's
Hollywood.
not good.
Right? So,
Yeah.
let me just read off some of the distinctions. I'll say that. Prince in the movie won for Worst Actor, Worst Director, Worst Supporting Actor, and tied for Worst Picture with Howard the Duck. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Wow. It's the only time you're going to hear Prince and Howard the Duck in the same sentence.
Yeah, it gets even maybe a little bit more funny too. About the only two awards that Prince and Under the Cherry Moon didn't win that night were Worst Actress and Worst Career Achievement. That went to Madonna for Shanghai Surprise, and Bruce the Shark from Jaws 3D for Worst Career Achievement.
Wow.
But behind that bizarre, chaotic scope of music was also this bizarre process of recording. This was at a time when Prince was creatively on fire, and he started putting studios in his homes, which obviously he would build later at Paisley Park. And sometimes the guy was completing 2 or 3 songs a day. And at the same time he was doing this, he got engaged to and then separated from Susanna Melvoin, who was Wendy Melvoin's sister, fired his backing band, The Revolution. So he was kind of going a little bit in all directions. And those of you that are Prince fans, you know that Sign of the Times was born from some aborted projects, the Dream Factory, the Camille Project, and a 3-record Crystal Ball that wasn't released, but parts of them were released and other things. He wanted to release 3 records for Sign of the Times, and Warner Brothers said, we'll let you do 2. But anyway, we're here to talk about covers as well as the music. So the music was eclectic. It was all over the map. It was experimental, and the cover kind of reflected that to me. It was very collage-like, although it's a still photo. And for those of you who are not as familiar with it, it looks like a stage setup. And it's drums, it's keyboards, it's Prince's Yellow Cloud guitar, lots of flowers, and the front end of a Pontiac Grand Prix. And this whole has this pink and black sort of patina to it, which to Prince was meant to represent Susanna and himself. And in the front, not looking like the giant celebrity he was, one of the most famous faces on the planet at that time was this blurry Prince, halfway cut off. But it's a guy named Jeff Katz shot the cover, and it started with him getting a call, probably at 2 a.m., right? Because it's Prince, and Prince just said, "Will you take my picture?" And I'm imagining that's just how it went, like that.
Was that your Prince voice? Can you do that? Can you do that again? That
did
was
you
pretty
close
cool.
your eyes? You thought it was Prince.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
But here's the funny thing. So he showed up at this sound stage, and all that was there was the drum set. And then again, with Prince's great direction, he said, "We have to fill this up." So, they scrambled to find. They went to Prince's houses. They went to each other's houses. They grabbed all this junk that they could find, and they even had they needed a backdrop, right? And so they went to a local theater that was producing Guys and Dolls. So the backdrop of this album cover is from Guys and Dolls' local theater production.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I mean it's just like yeah, make it happen. And so they shot, and then the very last shot, Prince walks up, sits down on an apple box right in front of the camera, and Jeff Katz snaps the picture completely out of focus, and Prince says, "That's the cover." And that literally was the cover. So I thought the cover matched the kind of chaotic, collage-like, organic feel of the music, and it gives you a lot to look at, but you're also like, what the hell does all this mean?
So is the cover image, is it a collage, or is it a single actually in-camera image?
It's a single in-camera image, but it has all this junk from people's apartments.
Yeah, I always thought it was a composite.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
I mean, how would you like that brief if you showed up to an empty soundstage and Prince is like, "Fill it up, I'll be back." Have a nice life.
I love it.
Well, it worked.
Yeah.
It worked because there's no way you can unsee that album cover. Once you see it, you've seen it. It's pretty much it, And you think about it, I think album covers back then, I think it was a lot more important than album covers today. I mean, that's my take. I think they're just a whole lot more important than that.
Yeah.
Right now with streaming and things like that, I mean, people are more interested in video. Even on Spotify, goodness, if you click on a song, a lot of times just listening to a single, they'll have a 10-second video of them doing the same actions over and over and over again. That's just how microwave everyone and how limited everybody's thought processes are. That's why I love this conversation, because I think that we are picking albums from yesteryear, obviously, but I think these are ones that kind of, stand through the test of times, or make it through the test of time, if you will. I'm going to talk about my choice real quick, if you guys don't mind. So we're going to stay in hip hop. This was a group called Cannibal Ox, right? Cannibal Ox from Harlem. Album came out in 2001. Two MCs by the name of Vast Air and Vordul had their debut album from the Def Jux record label, totally produced by Mr. LP from Company Flow, and also from Run the Jewels. So if you're familiar with Run the Jewels and Killer Mike, that's him. Let me tell you a little bit about this album. All right. Now the artwork itself is very spacey. Looks like anime, like a mech warrior on the cover. So automatically you had me from Hello, right? I'm a big anime guy. I love like Robotech and all that kind of. I'm like, oh yeah, I love it. Let's go. But their music was super spacey. It is what I like to call a Sunday album. Why do I call it a Sunday album? Elliot, I'm so glad that you asked. This is the album that I put on when I need to do a bunch of chores.
That involve eating ice cream.
Exactly.
Okay. Exactly. Yeah. Same Sunday album. I get it. Yeah.
So I put that on, and it could be, not a bright Sunday, but just like, kind of like a winter Sunday, right? Just early in the morning, and just let it play. The music stands apart. I don't think it's very hard. This group is a very difficult group to duplicate. I think they came at the right time, with the right message, with the right style. If you listen to it, I mean, their style is very I can't say different, but so many times. And in fact, the production matched their style. I don't think I could even hear them. I don't think they would stand out so much over your regular quote beats. So if you remember, like when Wu-Tang first came out with 36 Chambers, it was like, oh my God, this music, either you loved it or you hated it. And if you loved it, as a person who actually knows music, a person who actually can read music, who knows about chords and harmonies and things like that, you're like, sonically, this doesn't make sense, but it's still appealing to me. That is LP in a nutshell. I don't know how, I don't know why it was appealing, but it worked. And this was one of the only albums. I was telling Joe about this before. My hip hop partner, Brandon, I'm living in Columbus. He's living in Cleveland. The album came out, and it's underground. It's Def Jux. Not too many copies are going to be made and pushed everywhere. We knew what day the album's coming out. I get to the store, I pick up my copy, and I'm listening to it. I'm like, woof, dude, this is it. This is it. This is it. Please keep in mind, 2 months before that, we had the single. We literally sat in the car for 2 hours just playing the single over and over and over and over again. Ridiculous. The album comes out. I tell him, it's good. You need to go get it. He goes to his store in Cleveland, cannot find it. Goes to another store in Cleveland, is not there. Calls me up and it's like, I am mad. And I'm like, I'm mad for you, sir. I'm mad for you.
But I'm enjoying listening to my new album.
I'm enjoying listening to this.
I'm gonna hang up.
Do you hear that? Do you hear that sound? That's the shrink wrap from that said album. I still have it. I still have it in my hand. This dude got off work, drove to Columbus, picked up the album, and let me tell you how serious he was about the album, and called me on the way back to Cleveland. Like, I'm not even gonna stop and see you, dude. I'm not even gonna stop up and see you.
Yeah.
I got it.
like,
That's all I'm going to say. I got
love
it.
Got your shrink wrap right here, Toby. I got
your shrink wrap, mofo. Exactly.
Oh man, Toby, I love that story for two reasons. I love that story. The first one is for those of you not familiar with the layout of Ohio or the Midwest, Columbus and Cleveland are not suburbs. They're not like twin cities, or it's not Minneapolis and St. Paul. It's not Raleigh and Durham. Like that's a hike. Like that's commitment.
Yeah.
But the second thing goes back to something that we were talking about earlier, that it was a physical thing, and you couldn't find the physical thing, so you had to go like sort of where the fish were biting, right? You had to go to the watering hole where you knew you could find this album, and so like that's commitment, right? This dude dug on this thing enough that he was willing to drive 2-3 hours each way to, to grab this album. I love that story.
As a quick side note, I find that, we talk about mindfulness and living in the present and just fully appreciating the journey. Right? Not necessarily appreciating the destination, but the journey, the whole process of things. Man, when new music came out on Tuesdays, I've seen people wait in line for albums. I've seen people wait in line for movies. Now I only see people wait in lines for the DMV, right? This is the whole place. And even, I mean, it's just there was something too that I really sound like the guy that get off my lawn guy right now.
You know what grinds my gears?
Look at those clouds. Let's yell at them.
So, Toby, I had a couple questions for you because I listened to the album.
Yeah.
You said this is your Sunday morning, and I know, like most things associated with LP, this is not for the faint of heart. And so I'm assuming these are the Sunday mornings when you decide not to go to church, and you're just in a very different mindset.
Oh, for sure. Oh, this is a heathen Sunday.
This is a heathen Sunday.
This is a heathen Sunday. I don't know. Like this is a Sunday after you drank some on Saturday night. Like this is
you're still drinking. You're having Bloody Marys at brunch.
Still, that's right.
In the shower, Elliot. In the shower. What are you
I got a beverage holder. Yeah.
My second, I just need some clarity on what exactly a cannibal ox is. Does that mean you're an ox eating other oxes, or I'm just confused?
I have no idea what a cannibal ox is. I just knew I liked the album, and I thought the name was different enough where people weren't going to say, hey, what's that? The name of your group? No, it was something so different. That whole crew was really, really different. Just really, really different group of creatives, if you will. But no, I don't have no idea what Cannibal Ox was. I'm sure there's something behind it, but I haven't found that answer yet.
Toby, I will admit I listened to this too, and I became a fan after the first track when they had sampled Wall of Voodoo, when they had sampled Mexican radio. I was like, all right, I'm digging this.
Same too. I can totally hear how it's a Sunday, get some things done. It's got a groove to it, but I love that it's experimental. There's sounds you don't hear like you normally would on other records.
That's a really good point, Todd. I think saying experimental probably is a better descriptor than just different. There were things that they did that I have never heard on albums before or rarely since. One of the MCs, he starts a song off with a rhyme, and in the middle of the rhyme, he says the same rhyme twice. And then calls himself on it. It's like, hold on, said a word twice. Twice is nice. Freestyles, and then goes back. Yo, let's start it over. And it says the whole verse over again. I'm like, dude, no one does that. That's an outtake. Let's start over. The dude is like, no, keep it rolling.
Yeah.
Let's go. I can't tell you the first time my eyes, I almost drove off the road listening to that song the first time. Like, oh, what did he do? Oh, whoa. What did he get off the median? Get off. My bad. Bring it back.
Eat my shrink wrap. Throwing it out the window.
Hi, We want to take a moment to mention that if you're enjoying this episode, we have an archive of topics ranging from the Olympics to movie posters,
Think Ghostbusters,
iconic images,
think Bigfoot,
punk music,
the Ramones,
Saturday morning cartoons,
the Pink Panther,
and failed products like OK Soda. Visit our website at twodesignerswalkintoabar.com for full episode notes and visuals, the latest blog content, and to sign up for our newsletter.
Follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Find the links on our website or search using the phrase Two Designers Walk Into a Bar.
Most importantly, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps more people like you find podcasts like this.
And tell a friend about us. Send them a link to our podcast from your listening platform of choice.
And if you're inclined, buy our merchandise. Stickers, coasters, magnets, t-shirts. We're designers. We make good stuff, and it helps support the show.
Get in touch. Use the contact form on our website or send an email to hello@twodesignerswalkintoabar.com.
We read every message we get. Honest.
And we're available for speaking gigs. Email us to learn more.
Okay, now, back to the bar.
Joe, I think you're up, sir. Is that right?
Yeah, I can go. So I picked, and I can see this might be, I might get as much hazing for this as Todd did for Kiss, because I picked a Rush album, and I know that there's a very small segment of the population that are Rush fans.
But they're rabid. They're rabid.
Yeah.
They are rabid.
You're in good stead with Todd because he loves Canadians.
Well, there you go.
I do love
the ultimate Canadian power trio.
I love Canadians.
So again, getting back to the idea of picking an album because of the music and because of the artwork. So I'll start with the music because that one's easy. What I love about Rush is they had a trajectory of their writing, their growth. They took a lot of musical deviations. They incorporated different styles over the course of their career. But earlier in their career, they were down this path, and they were doing these concept albums, and the songs were really long, and they were kind of losing some of their fan base. And they came out with an album called 2112, which was kind of their ride or die album. And the record company was essentially saying, "Hey, we need some singles." And their manager was like, "Oh, don't you worry. We got some great singles, but I can't play them for you right now." And essentially they said, "Screw all of that. We're just going to do, if we're going out the way we want to." And it ended up that there was a huge response from that album, and it allowed them the ability to make their own decisions on their own career and music moving forward, which is something a lot of artists just don't have the opportunity to do. So they kind of bet on themselves and they won. And that gets us to, I think 2112 came out in 1976. This album, I don't even think I said it. It's Moving Pictures is the particular album I'm picking from them. It's not even my favorite album from their catalog. I mean, it'd be up there. But this comes out in 1981, and it's got all of the Rush songs that most non-Rush fans have heard on classic rock radio at some point, right? I think most people are aware of Tom Sawyer. Any musician has heard YYZ and attempted unsuccessfully to try and duplicate some of that song. And then Limelight was another radio hit, which I think includes one of the greatest kind of one-off guitar solos from Alex Lifeson. Just the way he crafted this sort of sonic landscape is pretty cool. And then there's some other stuff on that. Witch Hunt, which is part of a trilogy, is one of my favorite songs from a mood perspective because it sounds like exactly what the title is. Like you're sitting there in Salem somewhere and waiting to go, find some people to throw on a stake. So it becomes a huge hit. It's probably their most successful album. Great. So now we're talking about the music, and I think visually, so there's a designer by the name of Hugh Syme who has done, I don't know, probably hundreds of albums. And he's specifically, I think since the early 70s, done all of the Rush album artwork. Also, I'm assuming a Canadian. I should look this up real quick. I'm just assuming that because
I think he is. Yeah, I think he is.
did the X Factor album for Iron Maiden, where Eddie was dissected, and people were huge fans of that. He's done a lot of Megadeth albums, and countless others.
One that he did that's a little out of character was the Aerosmith album with the pierced udder.
Oh yeah,
Get a Grip.
Yeah. That he did that one as well, which is like you try to put like a Rush album cover next to that.
Same,
like,
yeah.
Like, yeah.
So backstory: Elliot and I actually went to OU and both went through the design program together. So when I was coming up as a designer or an illustrator, is actually where I started. I was fascinated by these people, these artists who, way pre-Photoshop, were doing really cool assembly of stuff in pseudo-realistic fashion, highly stylized. And I think that's a lot of Hugh's work was really kind of approaching that. And I was always fascinated, like, man, how did they do that? How did he pull that off? And this is not one of those albums. This one is more just a clever album cover. The artwork is actually a triple entendre. So the name of the album is Moving Pictures. We've got pictures of movers carrying pictures, and then there are people on the side who are crying because the pictures themselves are so moving. And then there's actually a film crew making a movie of the whole scene. So it's like, and to me that relates to, Neil Peart, who is the primary lyricist for, or I think the only lyricist for most of their songs, was so clever, and the way he packed a lot of meat into his lyrics, I think, is represented visually by this album cover. And I'm curious, did you guys A, listen to the album, and B, if you had any thoughts on the visuals for it?
Oh man, yeah, Joe, I got a story about that. Back when CDs were first coming out, I was kind of an early adopter, and the very first CD I bought was Moving Pictures. And what I would do to mess with my friends is I would invite them over, like, hey, you want to hear what a CD sounds like? And they're like, yeah, because we were used to vinyl where you put it on, it's like crackle, 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 crackle. And the first song, right? It's Tom Sawyer. So what I would do is I'd crank the volume way up, and because you wouldn't hear any hiss or anything, and then with the remote hit the CD, and it would scare the pants off my friends. Like, I would just laugh and laugh. But so I was like, yep, that's how CDs work.
And with the album, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but with the album, so like the triple entendre, so the people who are crying and the movers who are moving like the funky surreal art, they're on the front. And then the payoff is you flip the album over on the back, and that's where the film crew is.
Correct.
It's bearing witness to the whole rest of the scene. So like that's the 12-inch poster we were talking about earlier. Like you're never going to get that with a thumbnail on Spotify or something.
And the pictures that are being moved, there's the Salem witch trial being represented for Witch Hunt. There's the Starman, which Hugh actually designed that as well, which was first introduced in 2112. Eventually kind of became their signature logo, which is this sort of odd naked guy standing in front of a star, But it makes sense in the story of that album. It became an ongoing thing. And so there's just layers upon layers. It almost reminded me a little bit of, how you would just stare at Sgt. Pepper's forever and just like, who are these people and what's going on here? It was anytime, because if we think about a listening experience back in the day, to your point, Todd, like we would get a record and we would put it on and it's like, well, I hope there's lyrics. I hope there's cool things for me to look at, because I can't skip a song. It's too much work to go back over and, pick up the needle and get to the next one.
Rush gave us a lot of things that we could listen to. It gave us a lot of intricate sounds that captured our ears. And with all of their album covers, I think they gave us a lot to look at and to think about and put those two together. It's like, I always thought, like, I like Rush. I like Rush a lot. I'm probably not that rabid fan, but, listening to Rush was like learning, man. You would like you're going to school.
No, that's accurate. Yeah. All right, enough about that. Elliot, what's yours?
Oh, wait, I was supposed to choose an album?
Wait, what?
Speaking of homework.
Kiss Destroyer, Elliot.
I did. The struggle is real. Toby, going back to what you said earlier, but I was able to discipline myself enough, and I zeroed in on R.E.M's album from 1994, Monster. Do we need to talk about, do you think there are listeners who may not know who R.E.M. was? I just thought that we're talking as if all these.
We just did Cannibal Ox and pretended everybody knew who they were. Yeah. So I think we're okay.
Cannibal Ox they're friends of the pod, right? I mean, they've followed from the beginning. So that goes without saying. Yeah. So just very, very quickly, so R.E.M. Was huge in the 80s and 90s. This alternative, college rock band from Athens, Georgia. 4 guys were in it. They were all students at the University of Georgia, and they were just incredibly influential throughout the 80s and 90s. And they ended up influencing bands like Nirvana and Pavement. And then they just kind of called it quits in 2011 after selling, no big deal, just about 90 million albums. So they, obviously huge footprint around the world, global tours and all this stuff. So the reason I bring that up is because if you want an earworm, and I apologize not only to you guys in the room, but everyone listening at home, because earworm alert, shiny happy people, right? Yeah, the bomb just went off, right? So that losing so that was all right before this, right? And so R.E.M., Michael Stipe wanted to get away from all of that, all that kind of pop cheese kind of stuff. And what he decided to do for Monster was he decided that he would write lyrics and sing as if he were different characters. So it wasn't actually Michael Stipe singing, it was characters that he created, and they were the ones singing from these different vantage points in these songs, right? One thing that I've really heard as we've been talking about all these different albums is this idea of, and I'll admit I have a bias for this, but this idea of collage, right? So Todd, you talked about Prince having to throw together all this stuff on this album art and the cast going on in his life. Toby, you talked about all the samples that were coming in and all these very divergent influences, how they assembled, and there was sort of this magic eye gestalt thing that came as this Cannibal Ox album. Joe, you're talking about the layers upon layers upon layers with all of this visual imagery and how that was matching the music and all this symbolism. And so,
wait a second, you ask if we should tell people who R.E.M. is, but you just used the word gestalt. Just rolled right through it, just rolled over it all right, sorry, go ahead.
Todd just threw me under the bus, is what Todd did. That's all right.
Join me under the bus, Elliot.
Oh boy. Anyway, anywho's, Joe talked about our artistic bona fides earlier, so I think I have a right to use Gestalt. So you guys can go screw yourselves.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so this was their not so much radio friendly, but this was their loud glam rock album. It was a grunge album. They were experimenting, going back to Cannibal Ox, right? This idea of experimentation. Michael Stipe and the rest of the band wanted to experiment. And this album, so Todd, we always talk about Scandal. We love Scandal. There was a lot of tension going on when this album was produced. There were health issues with the band members. Michael Stipe, 2 of his closest friends, Kurt Cobain and River Phoenix, both died while they were making this album. So there's a track called Let Me In that's this really grungy, guitar driven track, and that's dedicated to Kurt Cobain. The album was actually dedicated to River Phoenix. And so this is there's a lot of just shit going on with this. And so the question is is there something that kind of emerges out of these ashes? Did the album ultimately work, right? So I'm gonna talk about some tracks that probably everybody's heard of, right? So what's the frequency, Kenneth? So there's your other earworm for the day. So knock yourselves out. Yeah. Crush with eyeliner. Yeah. Todd, I'm gonna give you the track name that people genuinely do need to look up. All right, because it's very of its time. Star 69. Do you guys remember Star 69? Not the song, but the feature on your landline phone.
Yeah.
We're not
Look
going to
that up,
reveal that.
kids.
You got to do some homework there. So how does this relate to the design, right? So a little bit of background on R.E.M. and design. So Michael Stipe was a visual dude, right? He still is. He's a photographer. He's a filmmaker in addition to, a singer and a lyricist. So they had these folks in R.E.M.'s front office. R.E.M. from the beginning in Athens sort of had this business office. So there were these two guys. One was named Chris Bellheimer, and then there was a designer named Tom, and I'm going to butcher this, but Recchione, I think, Recchion. And so the two of them, along with Michael Stipe, designed the CD. And before I get into the design of the CD, there was a guy I went to college with who was in the R.E.M. fan club, and R.E.M. would actually send out all these limited run 7-inch records and later CDs that were these very limited pressings of like cover songs, holiday songs. They got these folks to letterpress these album covers, these sleeves. They were super cool, and they were actually all hand numbered. So they were like art prints, right? So the band was really an art project. I'll use that term in quotes, on a number of different levels. And so I bring all this up to give context to Monster. So for those of you who may have never seen it or don't remember it, the cover art is this blurred sort of clip art drawing of a bear's head, like this black bear's head against an orange background. And so this is great, like kind of, Todd, like when you were talking about Prince. So Michael Stipe brings this balloon to Chris Billheimer, this guy in his office. So it has this picture, this illustration of this clip art bear on it, like this full bear, like, so not just the head, but the full bear. And he says, I want to use this on our album cover. Play around with it. Like that was the creative brief, like play around with this balloon. So Billheimer like changes the color of the balloon, like takes some photos of it. It was originally green, he turns it orange, and he rephotographs the head, right? So okay, fine. But when he was close to being done, he had to finish the roll of film. So, kids, go listen to an episode where Todd and I talk about Photomat, and you can understand what a roll of film was and all that. So he had some extra frames on this roll of film. So he kind of just does these hip shots, and he shoots, like, just to finish off, so that he shoots the bear head, but it's not in focus at all. And he's like, whatever. And so they get the prints back and the blurred bear head. Michael Stipe's like, oh, I love that. We're using that. So he took the time to like take all these very careful photos, and those were just like, whatever. So again, Todd, very similar to what you were saying about the Prince and Prince loving the blurred image, right? It's like, there's something about this that's magical.
Yeah.
So the jewel case. So this is, I know I'm talking about the era of CDs here. I'm not talking about albums, but the jewel case of the original CD, so jewel cases had the media tray, right? The tray that the disc actually sat in. And it was orange. It wasn't black like most of them, or it wasn't clear. So it was orange. So it actually matched the artwork here, right? And then, so that was a little bit different. And then the rest of the bear, this is one thing I love. The rest of the bear then ends up on the back of the CD or the back of the album. So they have like this blurred bear head on the front of the album. And then where the track listing is on the back, they have just this headless clip art bear body that's just sort of standing there like Bigfoot or something, like headless Sasquatch kind of thing. It's totally funny. Look, the bear head. See, I actually brought it with me. Got the bear head right there too. So the bear head is actually on the CD itself, and it's crisp. So Toby, if you want to scan the bear head and you want to use the bear head in an upcoming project you have, it is available in its original form.
I appreciate that, Elliot. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I just wanted to confirm again, it took 3 people to put that cover together. That's like having 3 people to make ramen. And that's what it kind of, that's kind of
3 people, and then they had a Bob Ross happy accident. And we're like, that's the one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. You know what? There's always got to be one person in charge, and the one person in charge points at it and says, yeah, that's it. So
it worked. We're talking about it today. Obviously,
one of they're talking about collage. So the insert card on this, or little booklet, or whatever you want to refer to it as, it's this mishmash of like images and lyrics and just like little sort of boutique like alternate comics and everything. Like it's really amazing. Like it's colored, there's duotone colored pictures of the band. Feels very sort of indie album, right? So these guys were on Warner Brothers, but this didn't feel like a Warner Brothers album. It felt very much like an alternative album, right? So printed on uncoated paper, so it wasn't slick, it wasn't coated, felt very alternative, right? Very lo-fi. Pictures of shit like the band, but also furniture, parking lots, just random stuff. It was almost like these outtakes, and they're like, yeah, that looks great, like throw it in the album and then drop some more Xerox clip art over it or scribble on it. But one of the funny things is they also have all the song titles that ended up not making it, like alternate song titles. Those are like peppered throughout, and it's just these rando words throughout, and you're like, I don't know what this is, but it's kind of interesting. So it was almost like buy the CD and get a free zine, It's very, very 90s, very zine-like, very indie, very messy, very fun, and very much of its time, right? So how did this thing do, right? So it's kind of crazy. We mentioned it was an experiment, everything like this. Ended up selling close to 3 million copies in the US. It was 4 times platinum and sold 9 million albums globally. So over their career, right? If I said they sold 90 million, so that was about 10% of their total album sales was just from Monster. So, Toby, you can laugh about the bear all you want, but ultimately it worked out.
But I want to weigh in with some context around this because, again, at this time, what'd you say, 94, Elliot?
Yeah, 94.
When it came out?
Yeah.
So actually, Elliot and I are our junior year of college down at OU. And if I remember correctly, Elliot was a big fan of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but David Carson and Emigre and all that like crazy experimental type zine stuff that was coming out.
Yep.
So I could see that when this, and also at the time we were kind of going through that transition of literally we would, Toby, you can mock us as well. That's how we would have to create designs is we would get stuff and then we would take it to a place called the duplication station to make photocopies and make it bigger and larger and whatever, just so we could, because that's how we had to create.
Did they make it rhyming so you could find it?
I think so.
You know what, Joe? One of the best things about the duplication station was it was right over an incredibly great indie record store called Hoffa's. So, like, if you didn't get broke making Xeroxes, you get broke going to Hoffa's because they always had all the great, like, imports from Japan and all kinds of stuff like that. So,
be afraid going to a record store named Hoffa's because you probably couldn't find what you were looking for.
Like, you have to keep digging and digging and digging and digging.
Right.
Hoffa's with an A, right? Isn't that the name? I got that name right. Wasn't that the name? Hoffa's?
With all the digging, you were hoping to find Jimmy, and then that was the gold.
I was hoping to find a finger with a ring on it. Yeah.
Joe, to your point though, there were hands that made that stuff. You could see the humanity of it, and that. Not too long from then, a couple years, handful of years later, we would be missing that in a lot of the visual work because, obviously, I'm sure that album or that CD cover was done using computers back then, even in desktop publishing, but it didn't look like that. We're still putting our hands on it. And as you said, Joe, and when you and Ellie were in school, you were Xeroxing things.
Because we're old. That's how old we are.
Yeah. Proportion wheels. We had to size that stuff.
Yeah, that's it. Right.
You know what? These stories on this, on how, designs and things like that were created is amazing, but I do want to point out something else that is amazing. The listeners obviously are not here to actually see the kind of pristine shape that Elliot's CD and booklet cover are in. It is pristine. The booklet looks like it was just ironed.
Man. I'm telling you, I take care of things. I take care of things.
Elliot, if you told me that you bought 2 copies of that album, one that you actually played and one you just saved for this episode, for this recording, so you could show it, I believe you. I'm like, none of my CDs look like that. My CDs have been through war.
And you had to dig that out. Elliot, was that in storage?
This was in storage for probably like 10 or 15 years. And I dug it out. Yeah. Toby, you need to, I mean, we don't have time to go into it today, but I'll show you my box of cassettes from high school, all my bootleg cassettes. Yeah, we could, if you really want to dig and go back. And those were all Joe. And Todd, you'll love this. I handmade all the insert cards using rapidograph pens.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
Awesome.
Joe was like, yes, of course. I knew I wasn't the only one who did that.
I still have my rapidograph that haven't been opened in 20 years. I wonder if the ink still works.
I want to also see the pencil you used to tighten up the cassette when it sprung out all over the player.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when the machine ate it. Absolutely. So I got to go back. So Todd talking about being an early adopter, I got to go back to Todd. It was such an early adopter. He also, do you still have your Betamax VCR, Todd?
Come on.
I finally got rid of it. Yeah.
This is how much Todd loves me. When he picked me up after having my wisdom teeth out when I was totally helpless, and I genuinely came to, this is a true story, came to out of the whatever weird zone I was in, whatever parallel dimension I was in.
Drugs.
Yeah, basically. I came Michael. Yeah.
Call back.
Nice. Close the circle. So Michael Stipe's ghost head was no longer hovering over me. And so I wake up and Todd says, well, what do you want? And I was like, I want to watch Airplane. And all Todd had was Airplane on beta. And so he had to dig out his Betamax player to hook it up to the TV so that we could watch Air. That's A, how much Todd loves me, but B, how much of an early adopter he actually was.
And to think that you made fun of him picking Kiss. I'm telling you, Ellie, that's just, I mean.
Toby, in fairness, that is cold gin. Thank you, Joe. In fairness, if Elliot kept talking, he would say, I might be an early adopter, but I keep that technology. I never replace it.
Speaking of pristine things, Toby, old things that are pristine.
Well, it said you just got rid of it. I just wonder if that was to the Smithsonian, because that was the last remaining.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's beside Archie Bunker's chair. Look up Archie Bunker, kids.
Callbacks. All right, we got to wrap this up, gentlemen. So I don't know how we're going to do that other than A, tell everybody to go not only listen to these albums, but dig up the artwork. Go buy a physical copy of each of those. That's your homework, people.
Yes.
Own something. You can only hope to own something as pristine as Elliot's version of Monster, but the rest, and good luck finding Cannibal Ox. You might have to drive to Columbus.
That's right.
You're gonna pay some money. You're gonna pay some money, that's for sure. But yeah, man, I think we had a fantastic time. I reserve the right to request that we do this again and soon. I think it was a great union of minds and styles, and just I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did too, and I hope I know the listeners did. This was a lot of fun. So hey, Todd, Elliot, where can people find you guys? Where can they find you?
Elliot, we're everywhere, right? You want to add anything to that?
We're at all record stores around Columbus.
That's right.
You can probably the easiest way to find us. Yeah, we're at Hoffa's. We're under the duplication station, waiting for our enlarged copies to get done.
Busy.
You could find us. I mean, twodesignerswalkintoabar.com is the easiest way to find us. But you can just search Two Designers Walk Into a Bar on your listening platform of choice, and we will be there waiting with bells on.
We're on the socials, so we'll talk to you. We love to hear from listeners. We love to hear what you have to say about the stuff that's going on and the pop culture things we talk about.
Yeah, and offer suggestions. I mean, we're happily open to suggestions. How about you guys, Toby? Where's the best place for you guys to be found?
Let me jump in here. You can find us at Precipice of Greatness.
Actually, I
did you just register that?
No, I bought it. I was cyber squatting on that since 1 minute into today's episode.
Joe's like, why
Say
did I have
cyber
to,
squatting.
Joe's like, why did I have to pay $1,000 for that stupid name?
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know. It seems like it should just be readily available.
oh, it's like, I'm getting more CDs.
That's right. There's got to be more copies of Monster out there somewhere.
Well, you can find us riffsonriffs.com. You can go to our website. You can have access to all of our past episodes, the full volume, if you will. We are working on our socials right now. We are in the process of working on our socials, but that's a good place to start as far as finding us. And we're right around the corner. I mean, we are your neighborhood barflies, right?
Yes.
So we're just right around the
bar
corner,
you happen
man.
to be in.
So
just wait long enough and you'll see us all get tossed out of it.
not walking out of our own volition. Exactly. Well, good stuff. Well, hey, thank you guys for everything. We appreciate you guys having us on your show or sharing this opportunity with both shows. And looking forward for us to do this again.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much.
It's been great, guys.